Alright, so we're going to try running YammieQ for the very first time. When I start up the program, the first thing you're going to see is this options screen here. So when you see the options screen, you want to decide what you're going to use for a console. So let's start with the CLQL. That makes it easy. And we're going to be connecting with the editor. So you select console via LAN and select use editor. Once you select all that, it'll give you information here to tell you exactly how to run the connection. So it says first press connect. Okay, so it says press connect, then choose file system setup in the CL or QL editor. Okay, so let's fire up the QL or the CL editor here and drag it over so we can see it. There it is there. CLQL editor. Get this out of the way a little bit. So it says choose file system setup in the CL editor. So file system setup and then type 127.0.0.1. Okay. So 127.0.0.1 and click OK. OK. And then we see client connected, which is good. Hit the OK button and we will see now that we are online. So the screen went from offline to online. Just to show you that one more time, if we disconnect, you'll see that it goes offline here. And let's try again to connect. First of all, it says press connect. Choose file system setup 127.0.0.1, hit OK, it's connected, and hit OK, and boom, we're going again. So once you've got that running, you can check and make sure that we're getting MIDI by this function under Tools called Show MIDI, which opens up a window that will show you the raw MIDI data coming in and out from the editor or the console. So if I move something, you'll see right away that there's MIDI data coming in. This is the raw MIDI data coming from Studio Manager, or sorry, not Studio Manager, but the editor. And as you click on things, you'll see it changes. Each time you close this, it'll clear that and start over again. So you can hit a button and see the raw MIDI. So it just shows you that everything's working. If you can see that that MIDI there. So that's pretty easy for the CL QL. QL is exactly the same. You can also go offline anytime, even while you're running the program, if you decide that you need to make some changes and do something or other that you want to do offline. You can do that, and it won't send any MIDI to the YammieQ program. As you can see, nothing's happening on the YammieQ. It's not receiving anything until you go back online. Once you go online, it'll start sending MIDI data again each time you move something or do something. So you can use that offline function if you need to make changes without affecting YammieQ. And now that's the CL editor. So if it turns out that we want to use a different console with something that works with Studio Manager, well, let's disconnect this first of all, and then go and let's choose the PM5D. Okay, we'll close this the CLQL editor, and it says in Studio Manager and Editor set input port to loop MIDI in and output port to loop MIDI out. Well, let's run the Studio Manager, and okay, so Studio Manager is running over here. Now it says in Studio Manager and Editor set input port and to loop MIDI in and output port to loop MIDI out. Well, if I go setup here, look at MIDI settings, I don't have loop MIDI in and loop MIDI out. Well, loop MIDI is a piece of software that you need to download and install. So I've already installed it, so I'm going to configure it here so that you see how it works. The first time you run it, it comes up with a blank settings like this. And you need to add 2 MIDI ports. I'm going to do a loop MIDI in, add that, and a loop MIDI out. So you need two separate ports for this to work properly. So now I've got a loop MIDI in and a loop MIDI out. Once you have those ports, this allows YammieQ to talk directly with Studio Manager. Without loop MIDI, there's no way for the MIDI to communicate between the two pieces of software. When you're not using the editor, when you're using a console, you don't need loop MIDI. This is only for when you're using the Studio Manager. So once that's running, I can just close that and then go to Setup here. And again, I don't see loop MIDI, but if I hit Update Ports, there they are. Previously, I had them set, so loop MIDI in is for the input, and loop MIDI out is for the output. So it says here, loop MIDI in for the input port, and output port to loop MIDI out. So loop MIDI out is there. So I've got those two selected already, so I can apply that. And then I'm going to run, so I'm doing the 5D here. So I'll click the 5D editor. Come on now, open up. Okay, there's the 5D editor. Now I have to do the same thing in the 5D editor. Make sure that it's set to loop MIDI in and loop MIDI out. So let's take a look here. It's probably already set. Loop MIDI in is already set. For some reason this one's not. So I'm going to set that. And then, okay, so loop MIDI in, loop MIDI out. I've got that set. So now that's set properly. Now the next thing I do, I've got it set to use editor, hit connect. Oops, we got a problem here because I didn't select the MIDI connections. So it says error opening ports here. So we got to make sure that we select opposite to what we selected on here. So if we go back to here again, take a look, you see that input is in loop MIDI in and output is loop MIDI out. Okay, here it has to be opposite. In is loop MIDI out. Out is loop MIDI in, so that's the two bidirectional, so the two can talk. If I hit connect, it says it's opening and everything's okay, so hit OK. Now Yamaha doesn't, this 5D doesn't have any way to tell you that it's actually connected. It doesn't have a online, offline type button, but we can still use the show MIDI function to make sure that we're actually getting communication. So there you go. You can see you've got communication, so that's all working. So let's try another device. Let's try, if we disconnect here, let's try the LS9 now. So again, LS9, and we're going to open up the LS9 editor, and the instructions here, same thing. Input port to loop MIDI in, output port to loop MIDI out. So let's check that. Loop MIDI in and loop MIDI out. Okay, that's set there. Hit OK. And when we hit connect, it's got succeeded proper connections. Hit OK, and we're online. So once again, if you're online, then you're golden. But you can also verify just by seeing that the MIDI's sent there. And once again, you can go offline all you want and make changes, do anything you want offline. And once you're back online, you'll see that data is being sent again. So that's the basics. I don't think any of the other ones are any different. The DM2000 and the O1V. Some of these other ones don't use. It doesn't matter whether you're using the editor or the console. The actual setup is exactly the same. So, for example, if I go DM2000, there's no editors requirements because the editor and the console transmit and receive exactly the same MIDI information. So in this case, let's take a look here. System setup, following the instructions once more. In the MIDI tab above, select valid MIDI settings for Yamaha in and MIDI out. So here we've selected loop MIDI out, loop MIDI in, so those are valid. Use Yamaha MIDI driver connected by USB. That's if you're connecting to an actual console. If you're connecting to the editor, so that's this part, Studio Manager and Editor set input port to loop MIDI in and input port to loop MIDI out, just like before. So loop MIDI in, loop MIDI out. And once that's set, and we hit OK, we hit connect, everything's good, hit OK. Again, there's no indication that you're connected, but if you do the show MIDI, we can see that we're receiving data, so everything's good there. So that's the gist of connecting to the editor. Connecting to a console is even easier, but essentially when you're connecting to a console of any kind, if you've decided to connect to the 5D, for example, you just don't click on Use Editor, and it tells you what to do right down here. You can connect with the MIDI cable, or you can connect with a USB, however you want to do it. But that's the gist of it. Once you're connected and communicating, then you can go on to starting creating triggers and cues, which we'll work out in another installment. Thanks for watching.